We are back. It's the Elliott Confidential Podcast with me, Christopher Elliott, and my boy, Aaron.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. My son, Aaron. And we're in Berlin today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And we've been in Berlin for a little while, so we have a lot to talk about. Plus, we did a side trip to Hamburg.
Yeah.
Hamburg, as they say in the United
Hamburgers.
States. Hamburg. Before we get to all of that, we got to do our question of the week, which is...
What is the best walking city you've been to?
Why are we asking that, Aaron?
Well, I think that Berlin has definitely inspired us to think about the best places to walk, because Berlin is just such a nice city, such a pleasant city to walk around into. Huge sidewalks, huge streets. It's really a walker's paradise.
A walker's paradise. I like that. And the reason that the sidewalks are so big is that this is a kind of a master plan city, and they wanted to have really wide sidewalks and wide streets that let in a lot of lights, because they didn't want it to be like those medieval cities where it's dark all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of green spaces here in Berlin, which is so cool. Big parks and long, like huge sidewalks. You can put cafes in. It's really amazing. But there have been other cities that we've loved because of the great walking, right?
Yes, absolutely. There are lots of cities that have been really good for walking. I mean, Paris is a good example.
I know. I was just thinking about that actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and you know, with the Olympics being in Paris soon, everyone is going to be thinking about Paris. But for us, it was like the ultimate walking city.
Yes, absolutely. But, you know, being in Switzerland was also quite good for a pedestrian.
They treat pedestrians and bicyclists very well. So anyway, our question of the week is, what is your very favorite walking city that you've visited? And we would love to see your comments. We will read them in our next podcast. It will be lots of fun. Almost as much fun as this week, because we're reading our comments. What's the strangest thing that you've ever eaten? I can't wait to get to those. We'll get to those in a minute. Anyway, Berlin. Aaron, Berlin. Let's talk about Berlin.
It's been really difficult to wrap my head around the experience that we've had here in Berlin, because we've just done so many things. But a lot of it, of course, has been just walking through the city, taking the mass transit. Mm-hmm. There's so much to see and do. I mean, we can walk an hour from where we are. We walk an hour to Brandenburg Gate. And then there's, right next to us, we're in Charlottenburg, which is a part of Berlin. And there's the Charlottenburg Schloss, which is a castle. And behind the castle,
huge garden.
Yeah, they've got an enormous garden. And it's really great for walking, of course. And then there are parts of town that are really cool that we've explored, really good for especially the culinary scene.
Well, we were very lucky because my brother, our good friend, Dustin Elliott, was here, and our artist, our resident artist, was here, and we got a chance to go to all kinds of places. One of the highlights was going to Tempelhof Airport. Mm-hmm. Which is, they decided not to redevelop the airport the way that they did in Denver. And so all of the runways are still intact, and they've created urban gardens there.
Yeah.
Which is something that I've just never seen, and I probably will never see again, is these gardens that are growing right in the middle of a runway, a former runway. And then people are also using the runways for recreation. So they're going cycling and skating on these old runways.
Yeah, it's just a really cool place. Big, open, wide spaces.
Very
Something
wide.
That's very rare to come across in Europe.
And great for walking. And here's an interesting anecdote. I mean, Tempelhof is a fascinating airport. That's where the Berlin airlift happened. It has a history in World War II, of course. But they use, in order to keep the grass from overgrowing, they use goats. They bring goats in at the end of the year, and they eat all the grass.
Wow.
So can you imagine the middle of the city having goats come in and just eating the grass? It's pretty interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, Berlin was completely unexpected. I have been here, this is my third visit to Berlin, I was here in 1974 when I was very young, and we crossed into Eastern Berlin. We crossed at Checkpoint Charlie. We went into Eastern Berlin, and I remember it being very dark and not the friendliest place. I came back when I was on my Fulbright year in 1994, and it was a giant construction site. I was here for a conference, and I remember just feeling very overwhelmed, and it didn't feel like a very welcoming city. But this time around, we're staying in a residential neighborhood, and we're staying at one of those Blue Ground rentals, which I highly recommend. So we're not in a touristy area, a hotel area, and I have found that this place is very welcoming. The people here are really super nice. I mean, it's a big city, so you find they're a little bit rough around the edges sometimes, but the food is really good, and the summer here is just incredible. And I just want to take you with me to a grocery store. You walk into a grocery store and all of the fruits are in season, and they have these Johannisbeeren. They're red currants.
Yes.
And they are, please.
They're very good.
I know you want to talk about this.
Red currants, yeah, they're great. And in Europe, they're in great supply too.
Yes, they're so good.
Really, being here in summer is wonderful because most of the fruits and berries are coming into season. And this is a really great thing, actually, because as a tourist, I don't know, I think that German food can be a little bit not appetizing.
Not appetizing. It's
unappetizing.
There are things that people don't really understand about German food. They think of it as just being beer and sausages.
Well, I think that you don't have to do the sausages. I'm not a fan of sausages,
yeah.
But the beer, if you don't like drinking alcohol, what we've discovered is there's plenty of zero alcohol beer here.
Yes.
And I've been able to try some. It's essentially just like kombucha. It's a little bit more bitter.
It's bitter kombucha, yeah.
Yeah.
We've had some alcohol-free beer, and it tastes just like the stuff that has alcohol in it, except you can function afterwards. And so it's not. I mean, German food is not all fried food, and really, if you go, and we may still have a chance to do this, if you go to the bakeries, the German breads are really, really great. They specialize, I think if you can say specialize, in darker breads.
Yes, rye breads.
Serious breads.
Yeah, and there's a mixture of wheat and rye that's really good. Yeah, it can be a little bit off-putting because, in a country that you're not familiar with, it might be difficult to feed yourself the things that you want, because in the United States we have this cornucopia, this just a great abundance of food that you can eat immediately. And sometimes
yes.
Sometimes that's not the case here in Germany. And also, I think that there's a lot of ethnic food here for a reason.
Is, yeah. For sure.
A lot of Turkish food, a lot of Vietnamese food, a lot of even Korean barbecue is becoming...
Middle Eastern too.
Middle Eastern, yes.
Good falafel places.
And so it can be difficult to say, well, I want the German experience, but this is the German experience.
This is, yeah. This is Germany as I've never experienced. It's the multi-ethnic, a lot of people coming from all over the place. I didn't even realize that a lot of Vietnamese people came from Vietnam to Eastern Germany. Mm-hmm. And now they're here and they have some really great Vietnamese food that it's the Vietnamese food here is just about as good as you get in Vietnam. It's very good.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there's a lot to do here.
So from Berlin, we made a side trip to Hamburg, and I had lived in Hamburg a long time ago for a couple of months, and I remember it being dark and cold. I was there in the fall, and I remember the people being not the nicest. Completely different experience this time. I was here during the summer. It was still dark and cold though. The weather there is legendary. It rains a lot. But the people were very, very nice, and I discovered a totally different part of Hamburg. We were staying in St. Pauli, which has a worldwide reputation, and we were staying in a very interesting place, a World War II bunker.
But we didn't really stay in the bunker because the hotel was a development on top of the bunker.
Yes.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, it's interesting because this bunker was built during World War II, and it was made to house 30,000 people. So when the Allies were bombing, everyone would run into this bunker. And then it was housing for a while until the early 70s, and then it was abandoned. And basically no one knew what to do with it. So now they've taken it and turned it into a hotel and also some office space. And it is very, very solid. There's no way that they can tear this thing down. It's going to be there for a long time. But the top part now is a hotel called the Reverb, which is a brand of the Hard Rock Cafe. And it is a kind of a hotel geared toward younger people. Small rooms, but great views.
Yes, you get a really good view of all of Hamburg. And the interesting part about Hamburg is that it has a very distinctive architectural style.
Yeah.
And when you can definitely see that when you go over to the riverside and what is the river called there? It's
The Elbe.
Elbe, yeah. You can see all of this brick architecture. It almost reminds you of London, or people say also Copenhagen. But it looks very interesting. There's a lot of very cool architecture. There's this church that's been bombed out that you can still see. It actually looks better because of all of the what do you call it, the burn marks. And then there are some modern buildings, very, very interesting. It is very different from Berlin. Berlin has a different style of architecture, of course, because most of the buildings here were built long ago. But you can see where there used to be older buildings in Hamburg where they were bombed out, is they've adopted this new architectural style that is very, very unique.
It is. I have been thinking about Hamburg for the last few days since we've gone back, and also Berlin, and that the way that they treat younger people is interesting. When I was in my 20s, I was here, and I just didn't like it very much at all. People were not nice to me, and I guess I was probably not nice to them. And now, later in life, coming back, I find that people are much different. And maybe the people changed, or maybe I changed. I don't know what it is. But I really feel like Germany's been a very welcoming place to us. And really, this year, for me, one of the highlights, actually, Germany and Switzerland. And I can't wait until we go to our next places, because so far so good. We've got Scandinavia on the itinerary next, so I'm really looking forward to those. What was your favorite part of Germany so far, Aaron?
Well, I have to say, Berlin has been a really excellent experience. I also thought that Constance was a really great city. And
I loved Constance.
Yeah. I feel like Germany has been overall really good. There are a lot of upsides, but then also the downsides are that it's not as clean as Switzerland, for example. And I think also sometimes it feels a little bit like Faded Glory, less developed, where, for example, there could be more development. And I don't know, I'm critiquing infrastructure at this point.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like it can be a little bit scary when you get off the train here and you see people, for example, doing public drinking. I don't know how I felt about that, because I'd never seen that anywhere else.
Well, when we were in Zurich, we went down Landstrasse, and that was a little bit rough too. It just depends where you are. But I do think that Germany has different standards than you find in Switzerland, for sure. But it is overall, you can't even compare it to places like Latin America and the Caribbean, which is where we spent the first half of this year. It still is very, very clean and very safe too. I have felt maybe one or two times when we got off the train in some parts where you see the graffiti on the walls. You're just like, I don't know, maybe I should turn around and get back on the train. But that happened to us maybe 1 or 2 times where we were just like, ooh, we might be in the wrong neighborhood here.
Yeah, but overall, I think the impressions are positive. And,
Yeah, oh yeah.
I've enjoyed walking around and exploring this place, eating its food, and enjoying the green space.
In our last podcast, we asked the question, what is the weirdest thing that you've ever eaten in your travels? And wow, we had a lot of people who wanted to talk about strange food that they have ingested during their trips.
Mickey writes, the strangest thing I've ever eaten is seal, and I wrote about it, my experience, for the New York Times.
Yes, I should say Mickey is the former Detroit bureau chief for the Times, and we worked together years ago when I was there too. And she wrote an article, and she's actually sent the link for her seal. I cannot believe anyone would eat seal, but there you go. Mickey, brave woman. Val says, Vietnam, it was some kind of egg that was ancient, maybe a 100-year-old egg. I can't remember the name, but I could only eat a few bites. Aaron, do you know what that was, right?
No, I have no idea.
Well, when we were in Japan, they had an egg, like a black egg. Do you remember
Yes, that was a sulfured egg. So they would
yeah.
cook the egg in like volcanic, what do you call it, steam that contained like lots of sulfur. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Mary writes, chicken knees in Vancouver, British Columbia. Chicken knees.
Chicken knees.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess you could eat almost every part of the chicken except maybe the beak. I'm sure that there are people who will try to eat the beak as well. Mark says, donkey. Yep, really donkey. It was in Verona, Italy. We ate at a place that specialized in donkey dishes. Would you eat a donkey?
No.
I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there.
Tom writes, fish head. Soup, stew, whatever. In
Vietnam, I think.
Vietnam.
Probably.
Yuck.
I'm not even going to sing. Do you want me to sing the song about fish heads? Fish heads?
No.
Edward says, crocodile meat while visiting Cape Town, South Africa. We lived in Cape Town. Do they have crocodile meat on the menu?
I can't say.
I can't say either.
Kathleen writes, a silkworm. After the fiber was removed, it tasted like a wet walnut.
Like a wet walnut?
I could happily eat a bowl of them if necessary. Might add a dollop of honey, though.
Oh my God. Here's a good one from George who says, autocorrect. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing.
All right. Kartar writes, Moreton Bay bugs in Darwin, Northern Territory. Zebra in Nairobi, Kenya. Reindeer in Anchorage. Yeah, reindeer. We've done
reindeer sausages, yes.
Kangaroo and emu.
Emu, yes.
Yes, in the Indian Pacific between Perth and Adelaide. Ostrich in St. Albans, Missouri.
Oh, that's you could start a restaurant with all those.
Wow, yeah.
Greg says the strangest food is sounds like zumzat, a special meat from our Afghani cooks high in the mountains of Nepal. Sorry. We know it was part of the barbecued goats they had just slaughtered for dinner, but none of us really wanted to know which parts. I'm not even going to go there. I think we all know what he's talking about.
Wonderful. Well, the question of the week again is, what has been the best walking city that you've visited? Please let us know in the comments, and we'll let you know. Also, as an extra, tell us what the worst walking city has been.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Do you know what the worst walking city is?
I would probably go with
Bali.
Canggu.
Bali. Just Bali.
Bali in general, yeah.
Yeah,
you can't
Indonesia.
walk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, very good. Let us know what the best or worst walking city you've ever visited is, and we'll read those in the next podcast.
Yeah, well, yeah, that'll be fun. Thank you for joining us for this incredibly fun edition of the L8 Confidential podcast. We are off to visit more parts of Germany, and we will report back very soon. In the meantime, have a great summer, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Take care, everyone.